Hi, everybody. This is Dan Stolebarger. Welcome to this week's KFIR Middle East Update. It's the week of May 22nd. We'll look back upon the last week. Make sure you grab the PDF PowerPoint that accompanies this video, photos, and much more in depth as far as what we're covering on the YouTube. So check that out. You can get that at our website at holygroundexplorations.com, or there should just be a link on the YouTube page. Okay, so what's going on? I found this interesting. The ultimate chutzpah for Hamas. They're demanding compensation. For what? Because they stayed out of the last war. Think about that. And then, there was this Nabka day, which we'll get into more detail. And just, this is our news bite section. So just a bit about what's going on with Israeli-Saudi relationships, how close to normalization, et cetera, et cetera. Two sides of the coin. Just read today that Israel's reporting that they're in advanced talks for direct flights from Tel Aviv, Ben-Gvir to Saudi Arabia beginning next month. That is huge. And yet, last week at the 32nd Arab League Summit, not only did it feature the return of Bashar Assad from Syria, it was held in Saudi Arabia, and a warm welcome was given to Mahmoud Abbas, his address, and then the Saudis came out and basically said, and this is the most troubling quote that has to do with the Israeli-Saudi normalization. The quote is, "The Palestinian issue was and is a central issue for Arab countries, and it is at the top of the kingdoms as Saudi Arabia's priorities." And so once again, this lingering situation with the Palestinians is probably what is pumping the brakes. And yet we read about direct flights from Ben-Gvir to Saudi Arabia, unheard of. And then the last thing, just today, I read that Iran's latest subterranean nuclear facility, or their site, likely seems to be it can't not be penetrated by the current U.S. bunker busters. And so obviously a major concern in terms of taking out their capabilities for a functional nuclear weapon. Okay, our articles this week, we'll start with, had the opportunity, by the way, last time I was in Israel to do the Western Wall tunnels, not the traditional rabbinical tunnels, which absolutely is amazing, but there is a new section that was opened. And as you can see in the photos here, it's where Solomon's temple was. And it looks as if it's the gathering place of the government, if we can call it that at the time. So in contrast with what Abbas had spoken at the United Nations concerning rejecting and throwing Israel out because they have no historical connection to the land, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made this week's Sunday's morning cabinet meeting a festive one following Jerusalem Day, the anniversary, of course, of the liberation of Jerusalem during the June 1967 Six-Day War. That was celebrated on Friday. But in honor of all of that, and again, a backlash to Abbas's UN message, the meeting was held in the Western Wall tunnels in the Old City, where several decisions were made to develop and strengthen the Israeli capital. And check the pictures out. It is amazing to see. Bibi and all that's transpired with this Operation Shield and Arrow. Remember, we've been talking previous with the whole judicial reform that his political base seemed to be eroding, the rise of Ben-Gvir, of great concern. But because of all that's transpired, Bibi's popularity ratings have increased. And again, because of everything that took place with Operation Shield and Arrow, he doesn't seem to be losing the amount of ground that would bring his government down and send Israel into another round of elections. But just keep in mind, now we have two major things that are on the near horizon. It's the passing of the budget, as well as, we'll go back to judicial reform. So we have to take a wait-and-see approach to Bibi. Now, as you know, on the right-hand side of the spectrum of Israeli politics is Itamar Ben-Gvir. He just visited the Temple Mount on Jerusalem Day. And again, again, the U.S. is sitting there thinking, why provoke all of this sort of stuff? But for Ben-Gvir, it's a matter of basically making the statement, we're here, Jerusalem is ours, we are the landlords of this. I'm happy to go up to the Temple Mount. The most important place for the people of Israel is this quote. Again, he thanks the police for all that they're doing on the Temple Mount. And he again makes the statement, we own the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And all the threats from Hamas, Jordan, is not going to help the situation at all. We are the owners of Jerusalem and the whole land of Israel. So you can imagine the effects that statement and event had. And then back to what I was referring to last week, Nabka Day, that's the Arabic word for catastrophe. May 14th, 1948 is the day of independence, Israel declaring a state, the beginning really of the war of 48. But in Palestinian and Arab circles, it's known as the Nabka Day, catastrophe. And Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas at the UN compared Israel's rhetoric to Nazi propaganda, and he demands that Israel be suspended from the UN. Unbelievable. And again, Israel is harshly dealt with in the circles of the UN. We know that to be true. This was the first official Nabka Day, but not without some, I guess you would say, rebellious stances from supporters of Israel. The vote to have this was 90-30 with 47 abstentions. And the countries that did not attend, obviously, were Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, and the U.S. were among those who opposed this move. This article I entitled CNN in Blasphemy. This CNN's Christina, I think it's called Amanpour. She falsely claimed, I've seen this woman often on CNN. She is not a sloppy reporter by any means. She's a longtime foreign correspondent for the channel. She has an extensive history of glossing over Palestinian terrorism and making statements that are biased against Israel. But this event takes the cake. This is in the category, in my mind, of blasphemy. Christina Amanpour falsely claimed that Lucy D. and her daughters Maya and Raina D. were, quote, killed in a shootout with Palestinian terrorists. Now, this phrasing implies that they had been armed and they were defending themselves at the time of their murders. A shootout? But in reality, these three women were unarmed civilians. They were brutally murdered by terrorists, firing upon their vehicle at point-blank range in a clear act of terror. A shootout always implies two sides firing at one another. A mother and her two daughters, the terrorists came to the windows of their car and opened fire. There was no shootout. How can it be reported that way? This is a point-blank, dead to right act of sheer terrorism. Time to fess up and make those statements. But we all know CNN will not do that. The last article really is the years that we've been covering Israel. It goes back to when Israel actually gave up the Gaza, Gush Katif. It was way back under Ariel Sharon when this took place. And again, the pundits back then said this is the biggest mistake Israel can be making, because this will simply become Gaza will simply become a launching pad for rockets into Israel. And those prophetic words absolutely have come to pass. And so, in spite of all that's taken place over the years, the many different incursions and wars in Gaza, this last one, again, Israelis are claiming victory. It was very successful for them. They were the clear victor. You can read the article and see those details, but between you and me, this was not Operation Shield and Arrow. Now it's just simply Operation Broken Record. And Israel is already counting down to the next Gaza conflict. So it's interesting with Bibi's government. And now there's talk about, instead of just airstrikes, but ground incursion. Those that are on the right-hand side, like Ben-Gvir, we talked last week that party, that grouping of parties are believing it's getting to the point in time where Israel's going to have to take the Gaza back in order to keep this from just being a broken record. Again, time will tell. That's our report for this week. Again, usually I end with letting you know what's going on with Holy Ground. We're going to Rome and Athens and Greece and Turkey, October 1 through 12. You can see all of that sort of like, we call it the Journeys with Paul. So we're going to see 3 of the churches in Revelation. We'll go to Thessalonica and Philippi and Berea and Corinth and Athens, and of course we'll end in Rome. So if that's something that's of interest to you, check it out. I think we have 4 seats left. And then we have in February our first of about 3 or 4 different tours to Israel. I think it's February 21st. Again, all the information's on our website. A trip to Israel is simply life-changing. We'd love for you to join us. Again, website holygroundexploration.com. With that, God bless you and shalom.